Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Discussion Today with your host Kriti Mishra. President Ram Nath Kovind has issued the formal summons for convening the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha for the budget session. Parliament's budget session will begin on January 29th, with the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha meeting in separate 5-hour shifts to ensure physical distancing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The full-fledged session would have 33 sittings with question hour, short duration discussions, private members' business and calling attention motions. The President will address both Houses of Parliament on January 29th, spelling out the government's agenda for the next year. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Union Budget on February 1st. The Rajya Sabha will have sittings from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and the Lok Sabha will sit from 4 p.m. till 9 p.m. And for deeper insights, I'm joined by Mridhula Raghavan, Program Manager, PRS Legislative, and Mr. K. Badrinath, Senior Journalist. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, both of you. Mr. Badrinath, coming to you first. Now we have the vaccination drive. We saw that during the last budget session, the session had to be curtailed because of the spread of the virus. We did not have the winter session. Now the government says that it is ready for the full-fledged budget session. What is your take, sir?
Idea behind having the very fact that we are meeting in the midst of a huge pandemic is in itself an achievement. In the sense that, yes, there were a few cases, doubtful cases when there was a last session, and in between the winter session was closed when the pandemic was at its peak, and now we are rolling out the vaccine beginning tomorrow. And henceforth, my guess is that you're on a downslide vis-a-vis the pandemic. Now, coming to the budget session is very significant, and it's a statutory requirement that before April 1, you have to complete the process as per the last amendment that was made. For the simple reason that your spending begins from April 1, and you have a complete year to do your development projects and your spending for socio-economic activities and that kind of stuff. Yes, we are in a very difficult situation. The government has rightly taken a decision to go ahead with a full-fledged budget session in 2 tranches. In between, you'll have a brief vacation when all the standing committees meet, and then there is a lot of discussion on the budget proposals, and then the standing committees also come back to the parliament with their recommendations or with their observation, or even if they're required for amendments in the finance bill. So it's a large process in a country like India, where I've covered almost 28 budgets. So we know it's a very complex, very difficult situation that the country is going through because of the pandemic. It's induced the entire issue revolving the pandemic and the budget is very, very complex and inseparable, to be fair. And now, in such a situation, Madam Finance Minister is expected to present a wholesome budget which covers a lot of aspects. Now, the background to the budget presentation is the fact that in the last 1 year, there have been several rounds of, both reform programs that have been rolled out, as well as the COVID-19 related measures that the government has announced over almost 8 briefings, if I recall, in 2 phases. Now, having said all this, when Madam Finance Minister, gets up to present her budget proposals or her budget speech, my guess is that there will be 2 issues that will be revolving in her mind, or will be on the top of her mind, for the simple reason: what are the immediate challenges, and what would be her midterm, strategy to bring economy back on the revival path.
Absolutely, sir. We'll talk about the expectations from the budget in just a bit, but talking about key legislations. Mridhula, several important bills were referred to the standing committees of Parliament. In fact, the JPC was also scrutinizing the data protection bill. There are other important bills like the DNA regulation bill, the medical termination of pregnancy bill, a very important bill related to the senior citizens. Take us through the key bills that are pending in Parliament.
That's exactly right, Kriti. While passing the budget is central to the budget session, there's also legislative business to be taken care of. And as you rightly said, there are a handful of bills that are with committees. There's the PDP, the Personal Data Protection Bill. There's the Maintenance and Welfare of Parents and Senior Citizens Bill, Anti-Maritime Piracy Bill. These are some of the bills with the committees. There are also some bills that were passed in one house but didn't move to the other house. So those are likely to get carried over onto this session. So as you said, there's the the medical termination of pregnancy bill. There is the pesticides bill, the bill on surrogacy. So those are a handful of bills that are likely to get carried over and be part of the legislative agenda this time around.
And what are the key ordinances that the government will be focusing on?
There's one ordinance that I'd like to talk about, which is the air pollution ordinance, which sets up a committee for commission for better coordination with neighboring states of Delhi. There have been 2 or 3 other ordinances as well, but air pollution being one of the significant ones.
Well, absolutely. And moving on, and so talking about the COVID protocol. During the last session, it was for the first time in the history of Indian Parliament that we saw staggered timings, multiple locations, strict adherence to the COVID protocol. What are the expectations this time around?
See, in last time itself, we have seen that there were a lot of measures that were rolled out. For the simple reason, one, the members were, spread across both the houses. Second part is there was a lot of, physical distancing anyway was there. There were, COVID tests that happened with even the honorable members. Then third part is the people were even spread across the galleries. And then you also had, physical, transparent sheets which were, separating them. And henceforth, and some of them, in some of the discussions had to join from outside the house. In some of the parliament committees discussions and all that, they could, join from home. So, and also there were even members of parliament who had joined through virtual mode. And there were ministers who were, replying to questions, sitting in their offices and trying to keep complete, stringently following all the parliament procedures and things like that. Today, even the cabinet meetings are happening virtually. So henceforth, the parliament, though it's a larger forum, yes, it is the largest forum and it is the top forum where all the policy issues are discussed. But my guess is that India has done a lot of innovation in terms of, complying with the COVID-19 norms. And there were sanitizers, there were masks, there were, tests happening and things like that. Yes, there were a few cases where there was suspicion of, positivity. COVID positivity. Yes. Henceforth, there was a little bit of concern that, well, should we continue with the same practice or we go ahead with something else? And there were a lot of discussion held both by the speaker as well as the vice chairman of the Rajya Sabha, chairman of the Rajya Sabha, who is also the vice president of India. So both of them had held discussion, they had consulted experts, they had spoken to all the stakeholders and things like that. Opposition parties tried to make it an issue that, look, our question hour has been curtailed and henceforth our democratic right has been withdrawn. But then both the presiding officers had to tell them as the circumstances under which these sessions are being held. And they had assured them that beginning this session, perhaps the things will change and we'll be able to hold all the possible discussion, debates, if possible even the question hour. So my guess is, as of now, the question hour has not been stated in specific whether it will be held or not. But the calling attention motion, you yourself said in your opening remarks, opening intro, that question hour will, the discussion will be, calling attention will be there. There'll be debates on several bills, as my co-panelist Mridhula has stated. And there will be presidential address where the joint, sitting of the parliament will be there, which is very mandatory before a parliament budget session. And also the president's speech will be very, very significant this time, because it will spell out as to what is the government's viewpoint on several key issues, like, say, for example, tackling the COVID-19, healthcare and education, how it has been impacted because of the pandemic, then the ongoing agriculture protests that are happening, and as you see it, if there is a consensus and the farmers withdraw, fine. Otherwise, possibility is that the opposition parties will try to corner the government on the farmers' issues, that demands that they have raised in a big way.
So you made a very important point about President's address. Mridhula, help us understand the importance of President's address.
The President's address is supposed to happen once a year. Either at the start of a new Lok Sabha or at the beginning of the first annual year. And the President's address is important because, like Mr. Badrinath had said, it lays down the policy priorities of the government for the upcoming year. It also talks about the achievements that have happened in the past 12 months. So that is the significance of President's address. It's followed by what's called a motion of thanks to the President's address, where members speak about what the President has said.
Mr. Badrinath, you wanted to make a point?
Yeah, in the sense that, President's address normally, when it happens, as Mridhula stated, that it will happen in the beginning of a year, normally the President address reflects or at least focuses on the key issues that are confronting the country's people, and also the specific policy directive of the government, or the policy line that the government is likely to take, because normally the presidential address has to be, as a matter of fact, approved by the cabinet, and after that only the presidential address happens. So the cabinet normally takes a call as to, say, for example, if it is some kind of the COVID-19 and there is a spread, and how the vaccination program is happening, and what is going to happen to the farmers' issues, or what will happen to several issues like foreign affairs. You have a standoff with China in Eastern Ladakh. So there could be several issues. Normally it will be a 360 degrees kind of a situation where he would try and cover all the socio-economic, political as well as diplomatic issues.
Absolutely, sir. And now let's talk about budget. Mridhula, it is for the first time in the history of independent India that budget presentation will go paperless. Tell us about the significance and how different it is going to be.
I think this is, again, one effort to keep our members safe. Going paperless, I think, is important to minimize the transmission of the virus. So I think it's an effort for that, towards that. Committee meetings that are happening right now, there also the agenda papers are not printed, they are circulated as soft copies. So all of this is, again, an effort towards digitization, towards going paperless, and overall also those keeping in mind the safety of our parliamentarians.
Well, absolutely. And talking about the expectations from the budget 2021, Mr. Badrinath, growth, revival, fiscal deficit, a lot of challenges. What are the expectations from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman?
So my guess is, I was just going through a lot of reports by the independent consultancies, the stakeholders that they have met, the finance minister in the last few weeks. Of course, again, it is digital. And my guess is the finance minister will have to perhaps reassure the people as to everything is intact. And from here, we only rebuild. We would only revive the economy. We would resume from what we left from pre-COVID levels. And the backdrop to the budget would be that, there's a lot of, contraction in the economy. There are different figures that are coming out. The Reserve Bank says it would be 7.6%. The advance estimate says that 7.7% will be the contraction, but the revival path has already begun. In the sense that in the first quarter of this current financial year, you would have seen a contraction, a massive contraction of about 22.6% or 23.6%. And now, while you come to the third quarter, you're heading for a positive, some amount of very modest positive growth kind of a situation. So if this is the case, well, how does the finance minister, formulate a package in a way so that the little gains that we have made in the last 2 quarters on the economic front can be consolidated, built upon, and see that the economy, expands in a big way. The job losses that we have seen initially are, minimized, add to the job market, which is the biggest issue today, and also go ahead with, say, for example, normally your budget is about 34 lakh crores. Mridhula will correct if she has the right figures, 34 crores. And every year you would see about 7 to 10% increase. And that means this time it will be around 35 lakh crores will be your budget. Now, your deficit you are discussing about. The deficit that was, planned in the beginning of the year was different. Now, with a lot of spending on, stimulus packages that have been rolled out, then your additional expenditure on the vaccine rollout, managing the pandemic itself across the country in the last 9 months. So all these factoring in, my guess, whatever little I've read, is about 7 to 7.5% is the budget deficit you're talking about. So now there are 2 ways of looking at it. Whether you keep the budget deficit at 7.5 or reduce it, and how do you go forward? This seems
right, sir.
to be the case.
You're making a very important point there, and let me take that to Mridhula. Mridhula, challenges for the finance minister.
Well, I wouldn't call it a challenge as such, but one thing I would want to point out is I think there's been a definite realization and recognition that our health spending is nowhere as near as where it should be. And there is now a need for it to be ramped up. But how can states and the center, how can they ramp it up when the finances are already strained because of COVID and additional market borrowings? Is something that we may have to keep an eye out for, both in the budget announcement as well as in the Finance Commission's recommendations.
And also talking about the productivity of Parliament, during the recent times, we've seen productive sessions of both the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha. The government has said that it is ready to discuss all the issues that the opposition wishes to raise. Your outlook on the productivity of the upcoming session?
Absolutely. So we definitely saw that because of the staggered sittings, Lok Sabha during the monsoon session, they were able to extend their sitting hours from beyond 7 p.m. And there were, I think, at least a couple of occasions where they went well into midnight discussing, taking up 0-hour issues. So again, it is to be seen how it plays out now in the budget session with so much agenda, both the budget as well as legislative. What how time gets allocated, which way.
So we were talking about the productivity of the session.
Okay. See, productivity is an issue which has been there for quite some time. In the last 6 years, productivity has definitely improved. With the configuration of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha changing in a big way, and the government taking an upper hand even in Rajya Sabha, the productivity issues to a large extent have been taken care of. The presiding officers, especially the Rajya Sabha chairman, had tough time initially, but with the numbers, the contours of the house changing in a big way, the even the political opposition to different issues that are coming before the house was little more muted or little underway, because there is no agreement between the opposition parties on any given issue, and there is a lot of divided house, and also the numbers are shrinking. Henceforth, even their ability to disrupt the house was limited. Hence, and also the way skillfully managed the houses, both the houses were skillfully managed by the presiding officer, is very, very significant. With Mr. Venkaiah Naidu being a very, very, experienced politician and a statesman, my guess is that both these houses have obviously improved. The productivity graph has been going up in a big way. And my guess is even now, with the kind of, consultations, pre-house consultations that happen, and even the different groups meeting both the presiding officers in batches, then the all-party meetings that happen, then the the business committee meetings that happen. Yes. Then normally, fairly, there is a consensus as to what would be the kind of legislative business that would go through, what would be referred to the standing committees, and what would perhaps be not, it can be deferred for a later date. Henceforth, my guess is productivity is on the rise. But definitely with the farmers' agitation going on the streets for almost 50-55 days, definitely the opposition will make a bid to try and stall the proceedings or try and put the government on the mat. And this is where the skill and experience of both the presiding officers will come into complete display.
Absolutely, sir. And before we end this conversation, closing comments from both my guests. Mridhula.
Right. So we've been getting information from the bulletin that there will be a there will be a question hour, and there's also time set aside for private members' business, which is definitely welcome news compared to what we saw during the monsoon session. It is going to be staggered sittings, but then again, it's going to be a longer session. Budget sessions are usually the longest of the three. So yeah, like I said before, lots to get through. There's the budget, there's the legislative business. So looking forward to it.
Mr. Badrinath?
Yes, my guess is more than the number of days that we are holding the budget session, the content of the budget session, the spirit with which this budget session is being held. In the backdrop, my guess is there needs to be a message sent out across saying that we are all united in this fight against the pandemic. Secondly, the vaccine rollout is happening. Third part is that any dissension or difference of opinion in a democracy, healthy differences, resolving differences in a healthy manner is the right way to go about it. My guess is that there's a fair amount of possibility that the parliament session is likely to be a very, very productive one this time round.
Right, sir. And also, Chairman always says that debate, discuss and then dispose. So let's hope for a productive session of Parliament. On that note, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So that's all we have for you in this edition of Discussion today. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.